You are listening to the Brain Profits Podcast. We bring awareness to the reality that, in large, people allow their brains to control them, which is causing difficulty at school, at work, and in life.
Success in life and business starts in the brain. Therefore, we want to explore the challenges that exist for people and organizations so that they are in control of their brains and not the other way around.
Listen in, be inspired, and take back control of your brain, and you'll create optimal results in your life, organization, and community.
Ready to start the show? We are, so let's go. Welcome back to another episode of the Brain Profits. Philippe, man, how's it going?
Oh, it's going really good. You know, the US Open is in town. So the tennis world has descended on New York. And so I'm a big tennis fanatic, and that's where I have been all week.
But for the listeners, though, it's going to already have happened.
All right.
What is your prediction? What's your prediction so that we can go back to the tape and see if you were right? Who's winning the US Open?
I don't bet on sports because I can't control what they do. Yeah, I don't even predict sports because I cannot control what people do. Right?
What?
I can't predict if they're going to implode on the court. No, I don't have a favorite. I think the feel-good story, which is not going to happen since this is Serena Williams' last US Open or last year on tour, last tournament. Yeah. I mean, obviously she would have won, but that's not going to happen. She's probably going to.
I heard Venus was going to show up too. I wonder if
Venus is in town also, but you know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So just kind of enjoying the tail end of the summer here, and super excited actually for our guest today because he and I go way back. Way back.
Oh.
Yeah, go way back to med school, playing basketball. I did not have more hair at that time. I think I still look the same.
You did not have more hair?
No, dude. This look I've been sporting since I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
So, no, for real?
Yeah.
No
way. Yeah. One
day
16. 16. Yeah. I used to have a fro. I used to have a fade. Really? Yeah. Wow. And then one day I got tired of it. I had never been to a barber, right? So I was traumatized because my mom always cut my hair, right? And sometimes it was a little lopsided and all this stuff. And sometimes it looked like, somebody took two knives and just threw it at the side of my head, right? And so one day I was just tired. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to shave it all off. So I shaved it all off, and then it didn't grow back everywhere.
Wow. Are you serious?
Yeah. So that's been since I was 16 years old.
What? That's wild.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah. So
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Dramatic change.
Huh?
Yeah, it is.
That's a dramatic change from afro.
Wow. Yeah. Yep.
It looks good, man. That's your look.
No, I'm like, yeah. Thank God it suits me, because otherwise I'd have been screwed up.
Right.
they make Rick James wigs.
They do a lot for men who are bald now, so there's still some hope that one day you'll see me with a different cut. But our guest today has been a friend, mentor, colleague, senior resident. So I'm super excited to chat it up with him today and to have him on the show. Dr. Daniel Barone. Yeah.
Welcome to the show, Doc.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So you specialize in sleep, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Why would you pick go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, why would you pick the field that everybody already does?
Great question. So, from our time together, me and Phil, we went to med school together, residency together in neurology. And he can tell you this, as neurologists, there's a lot of things that we see. The joke about neurologists used to be, we can diagnose X, Y, and Z, but we can't do anything about it, right? If somebody comes in with a stroke, really, what we can do things now, but back in the day, really couldn't do much, right? So a lot of what we do in neurology, nowadays a little bit different, but like I said, back in the day, you really didn't have much things to work with. Sleep was never that way. Sleep is a field of neurology where, really it's if somebody does have a sleep disorder and you take care of it, the difference it can make not only in their quality of life, but also in their other health other health aspects can be dramatic. So I kind of always took that as, wow, this could be a really, really gratifying field. Plus the science behind it, I absolutely love. So when I found out about it, I didn't even know it was a field. And it just, the more I learned about it, the more I kind of fell in love with it. And that's what ended up here.
This sounds like new science then. If you jumped into it, in the last 15 years?
Well, it's the field itself really, I would say, has been in earnest, I would say, for about 40 years or so. If I were to say, like, really, that's when people started to manage sleep disorders and really start to look, do research on it and things of that nature. If you look at if you look at it like PubMed or any kind of research compendium, you'll see in the last like 20 years, the amount of research that's gone up has been tremendously steep, just because people know how important it is.
Yeah, sleep. Yeah. So how are people? Yeah, go ahead.
So I was gonna say it's really amazing, because I remember back in residency, we're all sort of tired.
Yeah.
We all have to give lectures from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
No one's really enthusiastic about it. And he's given a sleep lecture. And I remember this is in that little conference room at St. Vincent, right? And he's given the most enthusiastic sleep lecture ever. Like, he just knew what he wanted to do. He was passionate about it back then. And as a friend and colleague, it's just so great to see just all the wonderful work that you're doing in that field.
Oh, thank you, Phil. And honestly, I mean, your path has been incredibly inspiring for me as as a fellow neurologist, and all that you've been through and everything, with your health. It's amazing. So
thank you.
You guys giving flowers back and forth. I want to ask. Let's go here, Doc. So this show is about how people's brains are used at large, and looking kind of at some of the negative spaces where their brains are controlling them rather than them controlling their brains. How is it that people's kind of the base parts of their brains kind of messing up, their sleep cycle, that's causing them to mess up kind of their life in general by not having that level of control, or good health, which would be that level of control?
Yeah, exactly. Great question. So I see a lot of patients who have underlying anxiety or depression, right? Clinical anxiety and depression. They see a psychiatrist for, they see a therapist for, and insomnia, let's say, is an offshoot of that. Okay. And that's when that happens, it's kind of very clear cut. But there's many other cases where somebody doesn't have diagnosed anxiety or depression, but they either just can't shut off their brain, or their thoughts ruminate, and then they take that to bed with them, and that makes it much more difficult for them to either fall asleep or to stay asleep and stay in proper depth of sleep. So one of the biggest things, and I know you guys are into this, is I recommend meditation. I think it's one of the best things that somebody can do. Start off with a minute before bed, just to kind of try to clear your mind out. I would say that's one of the biggest things that people can do. Meditate before bed, and then try to get some exercise in the morning. I think those two things can be very, very helpful.
I've never had a problem with falling asleep. Like, I can fall asleep and with the TV on, TV off. I can fall asleep in a movie theater, which, as a matter of fact, I have one time. And when I remember waking up, I wake up and there was nobody there, right? And the credits were still going. And then I get up and I'm like looking around for my friends who I was there with, and they were not there. So I get out and I walk out, and I see them walking in the lobby, and I said, "Hey man, how come nobody got me up?" They're like, "We thought you were watching the credits." I was like, "No, the credits were watching me." So I forget the movie it was, but it must have been terrible. But either way, why is it that so many people seem to struggle with falling asleep? Something that you would think should be like one of the easiest things to do. You get tired, which for me, I'm kind of being like moderately tired, maybe just at the end of my day, it's bedtime. Let's just go to bed.
Well, you're blessed. So thank your lucky stars for that. But because
thanks.
One of the biggest things is this thing called social jet lag, which is because of the computer and the TV and all of the stimuli that we're exposed to throughout our day, especially at nighttime, right? You work a hard day, you come back home, you're watching TV on the computer, watching binging a Netflix show, whatever, and you're doing that right up until bed. that seems like an innocuous thing, but the light that's coming from the sources, the TV, the computer screen, whatever it is, the iPad screen, iPhone, it's shutting off melatonin. Okay, it's shutting off the production of melatonin in the brain, and that can make it much more difficult to fall asleep. Melatonin is kind of our signal to say this is the time to sleep. If we look at nature, right, the human beings in nature, what happens is when the sun goes down, they get tired and they start to fall asleep. When the sun comes up, they wake up. And there's actually been studies done. Actually, this one researcher took his students to the wilderness for 2 weeks, and he found that just by being in nature without exposed to any electronic devices, we start to fall asleep when it gets dark out and we wake up when the sun comes up. So that's kind of our natural state. Because of all the things we're exposed to, that tends to not happen. So that, I think, is the biggest issue.
One of the things I always talk to people about is the importance of getting their sleep hygiene right. So preparing their body for sleep.
Right.
So I want to know, what is it that you do to prepare your body for sleep? Because things that I tell people are like, listen, the bedroom, the only two things that should be happening in the bedroom is sleep and sex. Right. Get the TV out, get all the electronics out, and then I give them other tips, but I want to know what it is that you should, what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the way I explain to my patients is this: you want to think of not only the bed but the bedroom as like a sacred place, right? Like a temple where you sleep, right? And you don't want to desecrate that temple with anything other than what you're there to do, which is sleep or be intimate. So TV, computer, iPad should all be out of the thing, even if you're not watching it. Just having a computer there where there's the temptation, maybe check the screen, check the email or whatever. That's not good. The other thing is things that you may not think are a big deal, like having a clock that you can see, right? If you have trouble falling asleep, the first place your eye is going to go is see what time is it, and that can kind of perpetuate some of these problems, right? You get a little bit more anxious, you start ruminating. Oh shit, I only have I only have 7 hours to sleep, or whatever it is. And that can keep these problems going. Finally, people like to they ask me, can I read before bed? And that's okay. You actually can read in bed 5-10 minutes on paper. But when it starts becoming, I'm reading for hours in bed on a device, that can really inhibit things. So you want to really not desecrate that temple.
Why do you say on paper versus on like screens? And does the screen matter, like Kindle versus iPad, or at least old Kindle versus iPad?
Yeah, good question. I get that a lot. It's if it's a reader that has a backlit display, like an iPad, for example, that's no good. If it's one that has like it looks like paper and you need like an external light source, that's probably fine. So I just say the easiest rule is just paper is best.
So the blinking. So what if you just, maybe I'm thinking about this is, maybe it's a little bit silly. I'm figuring because, I got dark eyelids, I get to blink and I maybe blink more. The light doesn't bother my eyes as much. So the melatonin gets to drop anyways. What do you think?
That's possible. Wait, what?
It's possible. He says it's possible.
I don't even know what you're talking about right now.
No, we're talking about the way lights get into your eyes.
It shields the light more than it would be like if the lighter skin. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's never been studied.
I've never heard that before.
I just gave you. I've
never heard that before.
I just gave another. So
but
listen, as the studies are slowing down, though, Philippe, I just gave him another tilt.
Oh my God!
Well, I'm sitting here looking at our three complexions, and I'm like, this might actually be a good study for the three of us.
It actually does make sense. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Oh man.
But you do a study like that. I mean,
it's gonna change the world. It's gonna change the world.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna be like more people.
You're gonna be like
people like tattooing their eyelids. That's what will happen.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's what they'll do. Tattoo their eyelids. They're probably doing it already. We don't know it.
Yeah.
So, all right, you get to write in cool publications like Neurology Today. I know you were listed in that as a person who are talking about people leveling up on their neurologic. Let's talk about. I mean, to me, I'm fascinated by that term, neurologic. What is that about?
You don't think I've ever heard that term before? Neurologic?
Yeah, I mean, yes. You never heard that term?
I've never heard that term before.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in your cognitive space. Doug. I've never heard neurologic.
No. It's
Oh, was I
they
maybe?
they call it so. So if you look at they call it. So here's the quote. I'm gonna give you the quote and it'll frame it. There are more options to treat sleep disorders.
Oh yeah.
And so the biggest change is in the increased awareness of just how important sleep is for neurologic health. So when they say neurologic,
neurologic health. Yeah. Well, neurologic health just it's kind of like
it's a phrase. It's not just losing that word on its own.
No, it's not. But I like that though. Neurologic. That actually sounds like a good
good name for a company. Actually,
I'm
about to trademark that thing.
I'm with several ideas in this conversation.
Today, man.
See, this is what happens when you work in the cognitive function side of things. You start to become better at the creative or ideation part of things. It's happenstance.
So this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, right? It's like so many things as neurologists can be tied back to sleep. Like, for example, headaches, right? People have chronic headaches, migraines. When I teach my residents, one of the biggest things I tell them is, look, don't dismiss sleep disorders as a possibility for somebody who's having trouble, keeping their migraines at bay. Seizure disorders, right? If people are not sleeping well, that can be tremendously detrimental to keeping seizures at bay. Chronic pains even can be tied back to not sleeping well. So a lot of things that we see can be really, I don't want to say it's all blamed on sleep, but a lot of it is.
Yep. And this is going to be really important for you, Doug, too. Libido. If you're not getting enough sleep, your libido can go down.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, but Doug, listen, Doug's like about to have a second baby in like 8 months. So
congrats.
Thank you. I know, Robert. I'm holding it down. I'm holding it down for both of you guys who kind of stopped the process.
That's right.
Oh man. What does it mean? All right. So I'm trying to draw out of you the problems that you're seeing in the world because people aren't sleeping well. What are the problems that are existing right now?
Yeah. Well, I think it's definitely a worldwide problem for sure, especially in the US, but throughout the world as well. We as a society sleep 1 hour less than we did 100 years ago.
Really?
Which doesn't sound like much, but it is. And
the
average person needs between 7 to 9 hours of sleep. We're averaging about 6, in the US. That has consequences short term and long term. Short term, I'm glad that they're going to do away with daylight savings time, because the number one day for car accidents in America was the Monday after daylight savings, because we are a sleep deprived society. You take another hour out of that, and guess what? Your reaction time slows just a little bit. Your decision making gets a little bit, decreased. And all it takes is a split second for you on the road to make that mistake, and that's when car accidents happen. So in a short term sense, our society's lack of sleep has, I think, consequences in terms of all the things we just talked about, decision making and that. But long term, though, poor sleep has been shown across the board: increased risk for hypertension, increased risk for elevated blood sugar, increased risk for heart attacks and strokes and diabetes and all this kind of bad stuff that we don't want. Again, I don't want to blame sleep disorders on everything, but it's a big component. I think it's often overlooked.
So what do you make about just in healthcare? Because we don't sleep in healthcare, right? I mean, we work overnights, we get called in the middle of the night.
It honestly, it saddens me, I have to say. I mean, Phil, look, you and I both know, right? Going through training, going through even college, right? I used to pull all-nighters. That was like a joke amongst my friends. And it's like, looking back on that, it's, you say, geez, that really was not smart. And medical training, it's like kind of ingrained into it. But I'll say it's not just that is the problem, because it's like, we go through 4 years of med school, 4 years of training, whatever it is, right? You're not sleeping enough. And then what happens is we get out into the real world as attendings, and we're still tired, or some people are still tired, and they don't take that seriously. So I can tell you, I probably see 20 patients of mine are doctors, and I see them for a variety of conditions, but they come to me after they've been an attending for 15 years and say, look, I was told as an attending, and I'm not pulling all-nighters anymore, I should feel so much better, but I don't. And I tell them, it's like, because you go through medicine, everyone expects you to be tired. It's like, no, but there might be something more going on here,
Yeah.
But we're told, we're basically taught to ignore it.
That's weird. So we have tired doctors working on us. That's not good.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Tired doctors and nurses.
All the time.
Yeah,
All the time.
tired, stressed.
That's why I'm always leery of the medical professionals that I always, I mean, at least when they're working with us. I mean, just as an interesting side note, with our last daughter, we saw two different doctors have two different opinions on like what to do with the child when she was inside. Because one thought, hey, we probably need to take her out now. And then another doctor was like, no, I think we should leave her. She should be fine. And then to watch like this strange, like, as an outsider, like, well, who's right?
Right. Yeah, that can be very confusing for patients, but that has nothing to do with sleep per se. That's more just doctors in general. I always make the joke, anytime you hear two doctors agree on anything, believe it, because it's rare that happens.
That's
absolutely right about
that.
Yeah. So since we're talking to the sleep expert, I know most people have heard of insomnia, right? Mm-hmm. The inability to fall asleep well, right? That's right. I'm trying to fall asleep.
That's right. Or either stay asleep or get to sleep. Yep.
Get to sleep. All right. So then what about hypersomnia?
Right. Good question. So hypersomnia is the other way, right? So that's when people who are excessively sleepy. Now, when I see that term sleepy, what that entails is people are falling asleep, right? Not just they're tired, because the word tired has a lot of connotations to it. Somebody can be fatigued, which sounds like sleepy, but it's not. Fatigue is more like, I'm not going to fall asleep, but I just don't have the energy to do what I want to do, right? Mm-hmm. Sleepiness, hypersomnia, that is, I will fall asleep, like watching a movie, for example.
Yeah.
And there's a few main causes for that. So fatigue has as many causes as there are, stars in the sky. Somebody who's depressed can be fatigued. Somebody who has a vitamin deficiency can be fatigued. Somebody who has, a chronic medical problem can be fatigued. But sleepiness is usually because of narcolepsy, which is of sleepiness. This condition called idiopathic hypersomnia, which idiopathic means we don't know why, right? And then things like sleep apnea or sleep deprivation. Those things can make somebody physically tired and sleepy.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder when it comes to sleepiness, so is this something that people need to have more, need to have more feeling to be sleepy? Like the people who are sitting there not having problems falling asleep, are they also not feeling sleepy?
Well, that sometimes happens, right? People who have chronic insomnia, okay, especially in the realm of, severe anxiety, let's say, right, or severe psychiatric stuff, a lot of times they will tell, we think of it in those cases as like a 24-hour disorder. It's not just that they have trouble falling asleep at night. It's they're on gear 5, morning, noon, and night. So one of the manifestations of that is that they can't fall asleep at night. But oftentimes they're not really tired in the daytime. Okay, you do see that quite a bit, and that's actually makes it a little bit more difficult to treat, because they'll say, I'm sleeping 4 hours every night. I'm not falling asleep on the train. I'm not falling asleep while driving. I'm functioning pretty highly, but I need more sleep. That can happen sometimes, and that's usually a case where we have to just kind of pump the brakes a little bit.
So why do people who are experiencing that sleepiness feeling, and shifting a little bit, why is caffeine not something that kind of kicks them up, gives them that energy that they're looking for?
Right. Well, caffeine is not a panacea. It's not going to take care of every problem, right? So caffeine is there to give you a little bit of a boost, but as a way to overcome a legitimately medical problem, it's not enough. I mean, certainly caffeine can help, and you see people with narcolepsy or hypersomnia, they'll say, I have 10 cups of coffee a day. And, it may help a little bit, but it's not going to overcome, true sleepiness.
So you need that 5-hour energy shot back
Right.
instead.
So typically I'm around that 6-hour mark in terms of how many hours of sleep I get. A few weeks ago, my body just naturally slept for about 8 hours, and I felt the difference. Yeah. Like I woke up and I was just like, oh my God, I have so much energy. I was like, I was like, this is amazing,
Right.
And my kids were up there like, wow, you slept in. I was like, I know, it was amazing. Let's go play basketball.
Right.
Let me school you guys in basketball.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So yeah, so it makes a huge difference.
It does. It does. And it's kind of, it takes moments like that for you to realize, hey, look, this is what I really need.
Yeah.
And
Is there
doctors, we just, a lot of times sleep goes by the wayside.
Yeah.
is there a percentage of Americans that you guys kind of have an idea of or having issues with sleep thereabouts?
Well, if you look at the literature, it's anywhere from like half to 2/3 of people go to a primary care doctor complaining of insomnia. Maybe not as a primary complaint, but they also have insomnia. Doesn't mean that 2/3 of the population has it, but at any given time, it's a very, very common diagnosis.
That's a really high. So
High.
if we just like made some guessing of numbers, you could say a little bit less than half of the population. If half the whole population, half of us probably see doctors. I hope that half of us see a primary care physician.
Yeah, I would say probably if I'm my best guess, people who are struggling with real sleep problems, whether it be insomnia or anything we just talked about, I would say it's probably like a good third of people have legitimate sleep
That's the tweet. That's
Yeah.
the tweet.
Oh, that's like 100 million people, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
It doesn't surprise, it doesn't really surprise me, honestly.
Really? Why not?
Well, because like I said, there's such a premium these days on whether it be work focused or entertainment focused, where it's like I am up at nighttime doing these things that I either need to or want to do, and sleep is the thing that gets sacrificed. We all do it, but it's a question of, to what extent and what are the consequences of it.
So I see patients about 10 days out of the month, 10
Mhm.
shifts per month. Can I get you to write me a letter for when I'm supposed to, when I have an overnight shift from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. like I do tonight? So I never have to do that thing ever again.
I actually can. I can. I don't know how how well they'll take it.
Yeah,
Listen, after listening to the pod and you requesting it.
Even my youngest son is like, don't they know that sleep is important? I'm like, it's a group full of neurologists. They should know.
They should know. Yeah, they should know.
They should know.
So, well,
They
probably
know,
doing
they
it.
just don't care. That's
Yeah.
Well, if the people calling it those times of night need the support, then that's why you're supporting them.
Yeah.
Does it matter that you sleep in? Yeah.
Sometimes when somebody, is they're coming in for a stroke at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, my first response is, what the hell are you doing up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning? Like, you're supposed to be sleeping through this thing and waking up at like 6-7 o'clock in the morning.
It's know what? Honestly, it's so messed up to say it that way, but it's when you're the one who's taking care of that stroke patient, it's like these are the thoughts you sometimes think.
And then I remember one guy, I was like, what were you doing up at 2 o'clock in the morning? He was like, having pizza with my daughter. That is a freaking problem. That is why you're here right now.
That's not that's a problem.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's not
So I have a question. So does it really matter like the time of actual real day that you get your hours in? Can you not sleep to 7-8 hours when the sun's up and just as long as you're inside of a regular building?
That's a great question, Doug. So it's not just quality and quantity which matter. It's also timing, right? So we have within us a window. You may hear people say circadian rhythm, right? That basically is saying that, okay, for let's say average person, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., right? And when you're in that window, that's when your body wants to sleep, right? That's when it's like designed to sleep. If you sleep out of that window, let's say like shift workers, like Phil, for example, right? Tonight or tomorrow morning, rather, he's going to go home. He's going to sleep after his shift. Now, he may get 7-8 hours of sleep, and you say, well, okay, on paper, it should be good enough, but it's not in that window. So the quality is, by necessity, going to be impaired. So even if he sleeps 8 hours all the way through, the quality and the kind of the good stuff of it will be a little bit less than it would have been from getting his window of time.
That's interesting. I wonder, so that rhythm, is it something that, like, say if you live in like Alaska and like the sun sets very, your sun's up longer than it would be like down here where we live. Yeah. Does that affect their rhythm? Is there
Yeah, it
rhythms
could. I mean,
for
they
windows?
they have sunlight. I think if it's like was it 6 months at a time or something?
Sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I'm sure there's studies on that. I can't recall them off the top of my head,
Okay.
but I'm sure though that definitely plays a role. But also the other way, right? So when it's dark out for 6 months at a time, I'm sure the depression goes through the roof. I'm sure there's like probably other consequences, even though they may be sleeping more. Yeah.
Look, I know one thing that you have to be really proud of is your book. Let's talk about sleep.
Thanks.
So what was the inspiration behind writing that book?
Well, believe it or not, honestly, I used to have like it was a dream of mine to always write a book, and even during residency, towards the end of residency, I would say, you know what, I enjoy teaching patients. Even Howard Sanders said to me once, he goes, Dan, you're really good at explaining things to patients. So it kind of gave me the idea of, well, why don't I just take some of these complicated things and just write it down. So I started writing things down, just as almost like a hobby, right? I didn't have any plan, and I got to fellowship and got to here at Cornell, and for about 5 years or so, I would just continue that process, just as a hobby, not as anything serious. And one day, and I think this is like the universe speaking to you. One day, I had a patient tell me, he goes, Dr. Barone, you're really good at explaining things. You should write a book. I was like, oh, it's funny you say that because I have all these, like entries saved on my computer. He goes, well, I have a friend of mine who's an author. He works with doctors. He's written a bunch of books with doctors. Why don't you guys meet up? And we met up, and it was kind of like that was it, And I think it's like I said, I think it's like one of those things where it's like if you're serious about something and you take the step forward, doors open up for you. You may not even realize how. So once that happened, then we started working on it in earnest, and that became like a nights, weekends type of thing. But it was great. I loved it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Book
That
number
is
2
awesome.
is in production right now, actually.
Is it let's talk about sleep part 2?
Kind of. I mean, the tentative title is going to be called The Story of Sleep from A to ZZZ.
Oh, nice.
I like it. I like it. Is it
Nice.
made for like people like me?
Oh yeah.
The common folk.
For patients. It's kind of like I don't want to say it's a continuation, but it's similar vein as far as like, just informal language, but it's much more expanded than what Let's Talk About Sleep was.
So you're going to explain polysomnography in it a little bit?
Yeah. Polysomnography, COVID, what happened with that. Some of the technology that's come out, these are the kind of things that we're talking about along with the bread and butter stuff.
You guys give us a tidbit on that because you're a little bit of a leader in that. I know you're kind of burying the coolness of what you've been doing and how you impact the world, but talk about that just a little bit if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So COVID really has impacted sleep and sleep health and fatigue and all these things in a variety of ways. And it's definitely an evolving situation where people are starting to, understand more about it. But what I can tell you is that worry about the pandemic definitely shot up sleep disorders because people were spending a lot more time at home, spending a lot more time in their bedrooms, working from home, poor sleep habits, right? And it kind of became this mixture where sleep and work and play all kind of intermixed into one another because people weren't leaving the house, right? So that's one. But also anxiety, right, shot up. People were more depressed. That also affected sleep. But then COVID itself has led to brain fog. I'm sure you heard about people saying that. Insomnia itself, fatigue, right? And we're trying to understand that more now. People are doing research just try to understand that why. So it's both
take a sign.
concerns of the pandemic, but also the virus itself.
Yeah. So I got two more things that are totally unrelated. One is I used to know this girl who had restless leg syndrome.
Oh yeah.
And she used to try to explain it to me, and I was like, I couldn't really wrap my head around like how that was really the problem that it was. How serious is that for most folks?
That's a really interesting point you made because if you talk to somebody about it and say, oh, so and so has restless leg syndrome, it almost sounds like a joke, right? It's like what is Jimmy legs? What is that? But if somebody has it, it is hell. Actually, it's actually hell. The best way to describe it is they get into bed, they're tired, they get into bed, they lay down. all of a sudden they notice that their legs feel extremely uncomfortable. So they have to start to move them and kick them to get them feel more comfortable. So much so they can actually get up out of bed. They start walking around, and the symptoms go away. They get back into bed. They lie back down. It comes right back. That uncomfortable feeling. They have to get up, walk around, get back into bed, and that can happen all throughout the night, making it virtually impossible to fall asleep. So once they do fall asleep, then there's this other condition, which is they kick their legs when they're in sleep, and that can wake them up. They can wake a bed partner up. So it's very, very serious. If somebody has it, it can really affect their quality of life.
What do you guys do? You guys give them
So-
medicine for that, or is it just,
One of the first things we do actually is check their iron levels. So especially in young menstruating women, they may have low iron or be anemic or so, and that can be one of the kind of predisposing factors for somebody having RLS. But yeah, medications is kind of the mainstay.
Yeah, all right. We and Philippe are a little slightly anti certain medications that cause big problems. Because they, maybe not
Good.
big
Oh,
problems.
yeah,
but big
no.
problems where they talk about, it's going to have all these other factors that can come with this, that maybe even death and bleeding through your skin, all the type of crazy crap that can happen with too much medication that they're creating these days.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. And lastly, all right. So it's my last question, and Philippe, you can take over when it comes to some of these questions. Who are I look at America sometimes and I wonder about the talent, the up and coming talent based off of the cognitive function decline through generations because of all the nonsense that we've kind of created for ourselves in this modern age. What's how is the up and coming talent giving you hope they're going to take what you've learned and like elevate it to like the next level so that we got to have some superstars or enough superstars out there that's going to, make a better America, a better world?
When you say talent, what do you mean? You mean like in medicine or in all things?
Yeah, and let's start in medicine first because you still teach, right?
Oh yeah.
So you look at those guys, and the reason why I say that is because I'm getting this thing on Twitter now, maybe because I work with people in education sometimes. It talks about the amount of kids that don't do well in mathematics, the amount of kids by the percentages. So if you look at math and reading, you could say at best 60% of them, right, cannot perform at standard level things. So if we want to say somebody's proficient at reading or proficient at math, the majority of kids are not. And to me, that's concerning, which makes me think, hey, I remember Whitney Houston singing about the kids being the future. That may not be really the case at this point in time because of what we've given them that have made their brains kind of not have to develop well enough to give us some, hopeful successes. So I'm saying, are you noticing, or and this is not, scientific, it's just like, how are you feeling about the talent that's coming up behind you that's going to take your work and then, shoot it to the next level behind you?
Interesting. Yeah. The Cornell medical students that I teach or supervise, they are brilliant. So from that perspective, from my immediate, surrounding thing, it's been awesome. I think
so you feel good about those guys?
Very, very, very good.
As
As far as
you?
like, what's that?
Are you saying they're better than you? Because I feel like in order to level up, they gotta be better than you. You can't be like right at you or below you. There's no level.
I would never say
below
that.
You have not played basketball with Dan.
Yeah, right.
He's not-
you. No.
Yeah.
Dan's not gonna say you're better than him. Now I remember that. Just a quick joke. You remember? I don't know if you guys seen the movie Along Came Polly.
Yes, it's a great movie.
Yeah, it was. So when I'm seeing you now, I'm thinking about the characters playing basketball and you and Philippe out there, and that's what I'm imagining. So
Rainbow, right? When he
rain dance.
Yeah. Rest in peace to that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love to see more Hoffman. Yeah, rest in peace to him. But anyways, so you're seeing the talent.
Yeah. So I mean, but we're talking like one generation, right? So it's not. I don't think it's a big enough gap to what you're explaining about. Like as far as children go, I do think though there is a problem with all the social media influence and even dating, right? I mean, it's no longer, go talk to a person you like and see what happens. Now it's like all this, and I think that is affecting it's affecting the younger generation's brains. I do.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know about cognitively. I'm sure that probably is playing a role as well, but I think socially and social interactions, I think, are becoming more and more strained.
Well, we know that social interaction plays a part in cognitive function.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
So if that's not experienced well, that's going to be a big component on
I tell people this all the time. When I was younger, in order to take a girl out, you actually had to be able to talk to her.
Right.
Now you're just swiping left, swiping right, and
it's even
right.
I was talking to a friend of mine just over the weekend, and she was telling me about her daughter, who's probably around like 19, 20, who had a boyfriend that they've only met via technology. They've never actually met in person.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, and in my mind, I was like, well, I don't know how you can consider that person a boyfriend or girlfriend, but not in my where I'm from. Like, you never met that person? Oh, that's not your girl.
Yeah. It's like if you have the skills, right, and you use that technology, that's fine, right? Like our generation, right? We grew up and know how to talk to people, right? So if you do online dating in that vein, it's okay. If you talk on instant messaging or a text message, that's okay because you know how to talk, right? But the people who didn't come up that way, I am concerned about.
Yeah, 100% correct.
Yeah.
We have to get rid of more words in our language.
Right.
So Dan, before we let you go, if there's 3 things that people could start doing today to improve their sleep, what are those 3 things that you would give them? What?
Okay. I would say the first one is be aware of the big 3, as I call them. That's smoking, alcohol, and caffeine, right? Those 3 substances, they play a role in how we sleep, especially. Go ahead.
When you say smoking, you mean like vapes, nicotine, the cigarette types, or
everything,
or weed, or
everything.
Like all forms of inhalation.
Yeah, especially with this example, I'm using caffeine because it is a stimulant, but even marijuana. I mean, we can, this could be a whole other discussion, but marijuana in any form, we don't know what the long-term consequences are that are on the brain. We can certainly help people to fall asleep, but as far as like what it does when the person is asleep, like for example, we know it inhibits REM sleep. We don't know the consequences of that long-term. So, take that.
Well, I did not know that. That's a new tidbit. I know. Wow. Yeah. There's a lot of people. So, recreation use. What about like the okay, so let's put marijuana aside. What about the new, Delta 8 and that stuff? Is that the THC? Is it the THC component that's gonna be the
I don't know. I don't know if it's known, component by component what it does to sleep, but I know it's not as hammered down as people may think. It's not like, oh, we know this is safe for sure. We don't know that.
Because we are, wow. Because I mean, I'm just thinking about some of because we can consume it. So yeah, you just blew my mind with that one. I didn't know that yet. So because we could take it, they got like gummies now. That's a big deal. I don't know about where you got. Yeah, I'm sure in New York gummies are probably big. I'm probably recreation use is probably big. And they now have powders where it's that, just put it in your pocket, just put it in whatever. You can put it anywhere.
Right. And I'm not saying these things are bad necessarily. I'm not saying that.
No, right. You're just saying we don't know the long-term effects.
We don't know the long-term effects. Yeah, we just don't. So, yeah.
Well, our history would show us that there's probably a problem that's going to lurking.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we do know that if people started in younger age, sort of like that teenage, early adult years, it does interfere with the normal evolution of the brain. So long-term, it can have significant consequences, right? But at least from a medical perspective, you're sort of weighing risk and benefits.
Sure.
And hopefully you're not trying to put somebody on it for long-term. You're
right. Exactly.
Coming up with a better plan.
Exactly right.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about recreation. We're allowing it to just be out there, like as much consuming. You can, like, some people like smoke all day long.
Well,
like
some people drink all day long. Doesn't mean that's not good for you.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe I've talked about this just really fast. That I saw a commercial today where Corona has a new can. Well, maybe not be new, but it's a slim can, and so they're naming it after Snoop. And the funny thing about Snoop is, even though he promotes the Corona, he doesn't actually drink it.
Yeah. I saw that.
Which is amazing that you're selling something you don't even do.
Right.
Yeah, but that's marketing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But it's
alcohol. Listen, alcohol is the most brilliant marketing out there because it's the biggest poison that we take in.
It is.
So,
Is alcohol messing with people's sleep? Just as a last.
So alcohol, what it does, and actually the first hour of sleep, believe it or not, may actually be better with alcohol in the system. But what happens is it starts to get metabolized out and almost like go through a mini withdrawal. So that ability to get to sleep and to have a good sleep for an hour, that now gets destroyed by frequent awakenings, not staying in deep sleep. If somebody has snoring or sleep apnea, that's going to get worse. So it's not a good aid to use.
There goes that. Or wine before bed.
No.
Anyways, well, Doc, what are you gonna say?
No, I was
Any
gonna
last
say
words for the people.
3 things. So that's one. 2 is
I threw you off. I'm sorry about that.
That's right.
You blew my mind with like, what? You can't smoke weed? Just like everybody in the whole country is like they're trying to legalize that whole thing.
Number 2, I would say, is the short nap in the evening time, right? So you get home from work, you're watching TV, you have your dinner, right? And then the evening news is on, you fall asleep for 5 minutes. Who cares, right? We go to bed at nighttime with sleep pressure built up over the course of the day, right? Adenosine gets built up. All these things tell us it's time to go to sleep. When you take a short nap, even 5 minutes watching TV before your designated bedtime, that can make it much harder to fall asleep at night. Okay, so that's a third thing. And then the third thing I would say for people to do right now would be to get into a good habits of trying to exercise in the morning, right? Get some cardio in the morning, and then at nighttime try to wind down with meditation. Those are my 3 things I would say.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. I'm gonna say, man, I'm fully blessed because I could take a 5-minute nap before bed and I'm still good to bed.
Well, I guess we'll see how you do. We'll see how you do in 5 years, Doug.
I gotta wait 5 years.
We'll see. We need to have this conversation.
I'm about to do a sleep study. Yeah, we'll bring him back on the podcast.
Season 8, you guys.
Season 8.
That's right. Season 8, you'll be fully demented.
Oh man, I'll be like, where am I at? What are you talking about? Oh man, that's crazy. Oh well, Doc, man, thank you for coming on the show.
Sure.
Dr. Daniel Barone, you can find him. Tell people where they can find you and your work if they want to follow along with your
on Instagram,
adventures.
Instagram, Daniel Barone MD, or my YouTube channel, Let's Talk About Sleep, which is named after the book. Either one of those.
Man, that's dope stuff. Instagram. What about? I'm a big Twitter. Are you on Twitter saying cool stuff?
I am. I'm a Danny B Sleep MD, I believe is what my
Danny B Sleep MD. You should have put like Danny B Sleeping. That'd have been, that'd been a throwback.
Sleeping.
Yeah. Danny B Sleeping. I think that'd be, at least for Twitter. Twitter to me is like where you go to kind of be a little bit more funny and
right. Yeah, I'm not as big a Twitter guy. I'm more Instagram and YouTube, and I'm trying to get into TikTok now. Yeah.
What's your TikTok handle?
I think it's Danny B Sleep MD. Let me see.
Oh, it's all the same.
Hold on, I'll tell you 1 second. What am I? How do you find your name? Oh, here we go. It's Let's Talk About Sleep on TikTok. That's it. Yeah.
A good thing I made you look that up.
Really good thing you did.
You're like, I can't find him.
Right.
This Danny Sleeping is doing a different type of sleeping than I thought he would be doing. Anyways, man, well, Doc, thank you for coming on to the show. It's always great to have on friends of Philippe, experts of your ilk. Hey, you heard it here first. The future is, it's probably okay, at least for one more generation.
That's right.
We got to pick it up, people. We got to get our brains under some control. Start sleeping a little bit, and then pick up the pace when you can. Anyways, well, we're the Brain Prophets. Until next time.
Dan, it's always a pleasure, man.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was an awesome time. Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.